You filtering your truth. In this video, I'm going to share with you my story on my journey of filtering my truth. And I'm going to also share with you things that I'm facing right now with filtering my truth. So we got to go back to April 2015. This is essentially when I had this wild awakening. I got sober. I'm sure if you follow this journey, I got sober, and it was an incredible and awakening experience. And something started to happen in that process. Now, I don't know if you've ever experienced awakening or had a second birth or a spiritual birth or have experienced a quantum moment, but what was happening to me is essentially I was waking up out of the sleep state. And at the time, I had no idea what was happening to me. It was pretty crazy, actually, now looking back at it. And basically, the best way to describe it is that everything that I knew was falling apart. So that means all of my past relationships with all my friends, like, it was getting so bad. All this earthquakes were happening inside my life, like all the things that I believed, all the things that I was currently operating in. I was starting to lose myself, which was great now looking back at it. But in that process, it was quite painful. And I was becoming aware of so much information. Now, if you've ever had an awakening, basically you start to download a lot of information and you start to become aware of a lot. Now, at the rate that I was growing, because at the time I would call myself, I was pretty extreme. I was learning a lot of information and I was downloading a lot of information quite at a rapid pace. And when you become aware of truth, so the best way to describe what I was experiencing was, from my point of view, I would always call it like I took my head out of the emu hole. So I was currently living previous to April 2015. I was living with my head in the ground. And all of a sudden, I pulled my head out of the emu hole. And it was like I looked up and I saw life totally different. Part of the ways that I was able to do this was through basically stop drinking alcohol and doing cocaine. I also started to study with plant medicine quite a bit and taking some acid as well. And at that time, I also started doing meditation and what's called sensory deprivation tanks, which is essentially a meditation pod. So previous to this moment, I didn't do any of that. And previous to this moment, I never read any books. Previous to this moment, I didn't watch any educational YouTube videos, none of this stuff. And then all of a sudden, I go from none of this stuff to all of this stuff all right away. Now, I accelerated my growth, which came with something. So I started to become aware of truths within this reality, become aware of what's called the matrix, right? I started to become aware of this. And when I became aware of these things, what I wanted to do is, I was so excited because my life was getting so much better, in my opinion. I wanted to share it with other people. And so I would see, now looking back at it, my approach, I would see other emus with their head in the hole. And it was people I cared about. And what I did was I essentially went into them and I tried to pull their head out of the hole. That was my approach. I tried to pull their head out of the emu hole. Now, looking back at it, that is not the way to do it. I know that now, but I didn't know that back then. And I would say to them with good intention, my intention was pure, because I would see people, from my past, whether it's friends or family, complaining about their life. And I was reading all this information. I was listening to all these YouTube videos. I was experiencing all this health, and these feelings inside my body, like getting into a sensory deprivation tank and coming out and feeling so much better. Yeah, at times it's going to be really challenging because you're going into your inner world, but at least understanding that there is an inner world. And I would try to go to them and pull their head out of the emu hole. But that's not the approach. And so my delivery was so bad. It was so bad. I had such a bad delivery. And at that time, when I would speak to family and friends and I wasn't received, it was really confusing for me. And I didn't have anyone to talk to really about this stuff. So I was navigating it on my own. And then I was the only one that I knew that had an experience like this. So then what I would do is I would go into the sensory deprivation tank and I'd go process. So on countless occasions, people from my past would hang up on me for good reason, which now I know why, right? Like I was speaking truth, something that I've realized now coming back, 9 years later, is a lot of what I was saying was not true. It was true, but my approach is how I delivered it, right? So if you're going to try to pull someone up to awaken, that's not really the approach. On top of this, what I was doing with poor delivery, poor timing, not in the right space, didn't consent if they wanted to hear it, I also was projecting. So a lot of what I couldn't accept inside myself, I was projecting that onto others. And that's not healthy. That is not healthy. And a lot of us, what happens is because we're not healed through it ourselves, it's very triggering when you're around someone else. So at this point, I closed off actually. I started to close off because it was getting so painful. So I can still remember there's days where multiple people hung up on me and it started to get really painful because here I am experiencing all these benefits inside myself, inside my mind, inside my heart, inside my energy field. But yet when I go around all these other people that are having the same challenges that I was having and I'm moving through it and I go to express to them about how potentially there could be a change in their life, it's not being received for good reason. And I started closing off and it became actually very painful. And in that time period, I created trauma from speaking my authentic self, from speaking my truth. What I now know by working with someone in Bali is actually closed off my throat chakra. Chakra in Sanskrit means wheel or energy wheel. So we have different areas within our body that have different chakras or energy fields. And I repressed my truth. I stopped speaking my truth and I started placating to people. So if you don't know what placating is or pandering, essentially you're a people pleaser and you appease to people so that you don't offend them. So you don't, make sure that they're okay and you're really soft around them. You see this in our culture right now. Our culture is super offended. And really easily charged and really easily triggered, and have the inability to critically think. And that's because we're not taught, okay? We're not taught how to critically think. We're not taught how to differentiate between emotional decisions and critical thinking decisions. And that's why, one of the biggest reasons why is because no one has a meditation practice. The challenge is if you're constantly in the external world, you're not checking in with your internal world. And a lot of us don't have the ability to tune into our own intuition. And it's because we're not connecting to it. So what happens is people get emotionally triggered quite quickly. And that's because they're constantly being stimulated because of social media, because of no meditation practice, and constantly being always having something on the go and never slowing down. So then when something comes in their field, they get emotionally triggered right away and have the inability to cognitively use their prefrontal cortex to make decisions. And so this is what's also known as what's called lateral thinking, the inability to look at things from different dimensions and to take on different opinions and different thought streams to be able to make a cognitive decision about your life. So with that being said, I invite you to create a meditative practice some way, somehow. Probably the best place to start is in nature. Now, a true meditative practice is going to be sitting down in a comfortable position with your eyes closed. You often hear people talk about, I meditate, like I go on my bike or I go into nature. These are great, by the way. These are really great. But eventually you want to get into a seated position with your eyes closed. The reason for that is you want your spine in alignment. We have 33 vertebrae, which is basically the stem to the flower, right? So if you look at our head, it's a bulb, right? It's a skull, right? And then down the spine is the stem. We need those 33 vertebrae to be in alignment, and then you need to close your eyes and connect to what's called your third eye. And this is where you're able to connect to something higher than yourself. You're also able to connect into your body and with no external stimulus. So that's just a side tangent to an invitation for you to create a meditative practice. You notice how I just used that word there, right? This is something that I've been learning. When you express your truth, is create invitations, right? It's not you have to do this, which I would encourage you to do it, right? Using that word, I would encourage you to do it, but it's an invitation. So if you want to step into it, then I would welcome that for your life, right? So this is what's called like non-abrasive language, where it allows you to express your truth, but at the same time, it's not being forced or projected on, and you're speaking from your heart. Now, when I was younger, I was speaking from my heart, but the delivery, the timing, the word choices, the energy at which I delivered in wasn't very appropriate. And so I needed to study communication. So then now that brings me to when I wanted to come onto social media. Now, previous to 30 years old, I never had any Facebook, I never had any Instagram, never had a MySpace, I barely even had an email. And when I came onto social media, that was really revealing for me. I had to work through a lot. Like I'm telling you, wow, I was bad. And I was a tech phobe. So just think of all the things that I had to come onto social media, like never had social media. So what that means is I don't really know many people on social media where they had their brain, other than our parents, but that had their brain fully developed, not being connected to the internet. So I was a very in the physical reality human. I never wanted to connect on the internet, but I wanted to create a life that was free and online. And the only thing to do that I could resonate with is because I watched all these YouTubers and I watched all these when I was on previous to social media, I would watch them and I'd learn, And so I was like, you know what, this is something I want to do. So I got to get on social media and I got to be a coach. And so what I knew to do was Instagram. And the challenge with that is I'm a chameleon, okay? I have the ability to speak and hang out with a lot of different kinds and types of people. I think the reason for that is, well, there's two. There's a shadow and there's a light. So like a yin and yang. I'll share the two sides. The light side of that is because I'm a very accepting human. Ironically, I was speaking truth and in a way non-accepting people's sleep state. But it wasn't that I wasn't accepting people's sleep state. It was that I was hearing people complain, because you just got to speak to anyone and you'll often hear a lot of people, especially from my past, just complain. There's a lot of complaining going on, which is okay. Just in my heart, I want to support them in that and say, oh, your life looks like you're challenged with this. Like I went through that too. This is something that I found to be beneficial for me. But what I found later on is that a lot of people actually just want to complain. They don't really want to change their life. So a very select few that actually want change in their life. So for me, what I did was I kind of stepped back. So the reason I'm able to be around a lot of different people, because I don't care if you complain, I don't care where your current life is at, because I'm a representation of change. So I have this ability to accept people where they're at. And whatever culture, whatever belief they're in, I have a deep acceptance. I hang out with previously a lot with people that, I was sober for a very long time. And when I was in Vegas, I was around people doing drugs, alcohol all the time, like didn't bother me. So that's the light side. But the shadow side of my chameleonness is that I don't stand in my truth. I don't stand in really what I think at times, because I want to create an energetic balance in the room. Now, this is something I'm currently challenged with right now, and I'm recognizing it, is that if I'm trying to be something for everyone, I'm going to be no one for anyone. So what I need to do now, and this is something I'm currently being challenged with and I'm currently looking at how to address it, is that if I try to appease everyone, and this is what I started to find on social media, but if I try to appease everyone, it's going to get really challenging for my truth to come out. So let's go back to the social media. Coming on to social media, I'm trying to be something for everyone. I'm looking at this person on Instagram and that person on Instagram, and then I'm making all these friends in Bali, and I'm wanting to make sure that my social media reflects my in-person. Well, my in-person is very dynamic. I have a very excited guy. I have a very motivated guy. I have a very zen guy. I have a very quiet guy. I have a very loud guy. I have a very laughing guy. I'm sure you have multiple different places inside yourself. So I can connect with introverts and I can connect with extroverts. I can connect with, musicians and creatives. I can connect with financial bean counters. I can connect with science people. I can connect with spirituality people. I can connect with teachers and children and all these different, because for me personally, I'm just an interested person. So I'm interested, I'm a people person. So it doesn't matter. But when I come online, it got very challenging because I'm all of these things. And I don't know if you've ever felt this with creating a public image, but I have all these desires and I have all these different flavors of myself. And in order from my understanding previously, to be successful online, you have to narrow yourself to one thing online to be successful. And this has been my biggest challenge online, is to what's called niche down. I couldn't find a niche. And anytime I started to niche, it made me feel really uncomfortable. So I needed broad enough topics to basically help my palette. I have so many desires and so many things I love talking about that to confine it to one thing, this small little thing, which makes sense online because there's a lot of competition and all this type of stuff. Found a new way, by the way, but I could never find my lane because it was so challenging to find a topic that was broad enough for me to have enough range, but small enough that had enough pain that when people heard about it, they're like, oh, that was it. So that landed on public speaking. I became a public speaker trainer. It was small enough for people to understand what that was, but broad enough to give me range to talk about. But if you ever came to one of my trainings in the room, you would know that a lot of times I would, slip information in about things that I was passionate about, like about how your mind works, how reality works, the universal laws, law of attraction, energy, the importance of energy alignment, meditation, all these types of things, just to name a small few, on public speaking. And I would sink all those in and I'd weave them into public speaking. And I ended up becoming quite successful, actually, quite quickly on the island. I started to get a name for myself. It's a small island in Indonesia, and I made a little bit of a name for myself quite quickly. And it was really nice because around everyone that I would interact with, for the first time on being online, after I think at this point 3.5 years of trying to find a lane, I finally found one. And my friends and my network and people I would interact with, they'd ask me, oh, what do you do? And I'm like, oh, I'm a public speaker trainer. And then they'd be like, oh, I get that. Like, oh, I need that. And then for the first time, I was being validated online. My family, for the first time, oh my God, this was so nice. For the first time, my family knew what I was doing. Like, oh, he's a public speaker trainer, right? Because previous to this, it's like I'm doing all this random stuff. Like I don't really understand because it's quite unconventional. So for the 9-to-5ers, living the online life is quite confusing. And what you have to do to be successful on it, it's too far for their paradigm to understand the work that is involved to become successful online. This has just been my experience. I've now come home after being away for 5 years, living in Bali in a pretty much bubble around a bunch of online entrepreneurs and thinking that everyone understands this stuff. And as soon as I leave Bali, I come to the modern world, the first world, in different countries, by the way, not just one country. I've went to England as well. I went to England and Canada, and I realized, whoa, like, if you're an online person, so if you're watching this right now and you're wanting to do online world, reach out to me. I'd love to support you. Write a comment below, and I'd be willing to, chat with you and let you know if it's something that you've desired to want to do. And I've realized by going to these countries that, this is quite far out for a lot of people. Just to give you perspective, I have one friend from my old life that I can explain what I do. But everyone else, I can't explain what I do to them. They don't have the bandwidth to receive the depth of actually what it takes to become online. And the interesting thing is, and the paradox about the online world is this: it looks so easy online, right? Oh, you're just post a video, right? Like, oh man, did I get humbled. To make money, you just post a video, right? Like, no, at least that's not been my experience, and that has not been the experience of the people that I've talked to be successful. You have no idea what it takes to actually make it behind the scenes. Maybe you're a lucky one that just is intuitively understanding how this whole internet machine works, but if you're someone like me that comes far away, like I'm a green grass human, like in the jungle, in the forest human, like there's so much to learn to being successful online, and I've been extremely humbled. So I finally found a lane where I could be online and I could post about it and I could talk about it, and it gave me enough arena to play in. Plus, I really love information that I'm learning for the first time, and then the fastest way to learn something is by teaching it. So I had a desire inside my heart when I was 25 years old in Vancouver, almost about 9 years ago, to be a professional public speaker. And I got a part of a public speaking association, and I got a mentor right away, and then I booked a talk right away, and it overwhelmed me. I was like, no, because basically I got this information. I basically got, you know how that you fake it till you make it, right? That saying, fake it till you make it. Like, I lied until I made it, like I was lying to get into this association. I was lying to get on the stage, and all these things got booked. But in my heart, I was going into sensory deprivation tanks every day, pretty much, because I owned a sensory deprivation tank center, a float center. And I was reflecting on my actions, and I'm like, no, I cannot pursue the stage for my own ego. And you know what's interesting? I wanted my family and my friends to hear me so much that I was like, if I get on a microphone and if there's a room full of people listening to me, hopefully that will validate me enough where my family and my friends will start listening to me. And think about where that place comes from, right? So it's like, I wanted to get on stage so that my family and my friends would validate me, to hear me, hopefully hear me, like what I have to say. Is like, think of the logic here, right? If there's a room full of people willing to listen to me, don't you think I have something to say? But that came from pain of not allowing my truth to land. And that was me needing their validation and needing them to hear me. But why? Well, yeah, on the one side, I did care. I cared deeply, like to the deepest depths of my heart. That's why I've been deeply pained along my journey when at times friends and family told me I didn't care, because it's like the exact opposite of that. I'm the exact opposite. It's like they've never lose sight. It's just I needed to become better. I need to become stronger at articulating my messages and my truth and delivering my truth and the timing. So that's why I became a public speaker trainer, because the fastest way to learn something is by teaching it. So every week I ran a training, and I saw people speak, and I was training them to speak their truth. And I would get them on stage, and I would help them, and I'd support them on their timing, on their expression, on their body language, and all the stuff that I was learning, I was sharing with them. And I was pretty much I would say a couple of people in the room, I was quite a few steps ahead. And then some people, I was just one step ahead of them. And then other people that would come in my room, they were very talented speakers, and I would learn from them as well. I always keep that format open, like I can learn from you, you can learn from me. Hey, what does everyone else think in this room? I am a good conductor of experiences, but with that being said, I always leave space in the room being like, look, everyone is an expert in here. Like, I'd love to hear from you as well. And so I created a public speaker training container, and I'd run these every week. And the irony is I was supporting people to speak their truth. And the universe works in beautiful ways, and I wasn't speaking my truth. And I got a mentor, and she connected me to someone else that basically helps with throat chakra unlocks. And there's all these yoga poses that you can do every morning, these exercises and all this stuff. And basically I had a throat chakra unlock during this time period. And I started speaking more and more, and I trained and trained and trained. But something was happening. I was being incongruent because I was helping people speak their truth, but I wasn't speaking mine. And so I tried to pivot with the community that I was growing. And I tried to pivot. I tried to pivot into public, spiritual. I even labeled it the spiritual aspects of public speaking. Like, that's what I did. I was like, okay, I'll give you your public speaking, but I want to speak about this. And basically 2 people showed up. And so it wasn't really a product market fit. And it makes sense because people wanted to learn about hand gestures. And the phenomenon that was happening is when they came in the room, they thought they were getting public speaking, but they were getting public healing. And so it was incongruent in my marketing. So I needed to make a shift. I made a call, and a lot of things happened, and I basically left Bali. So that brings me to today. I've been sitting 9 months in reflection, away from social media. You can see these are my first couple of videos coming back, trying to be more natural, trying to be exactly as I am, not trying to hide anything, not trying to be more than I am, trying to be as much as I just am today. So what am I currently challenged with right now? My public image. So I built this persona online of a public speaker trainer. My feed looks really good when I network with people right now. Like, they can see I got social proof on there. It basically ticks all the boxes other than the number count, but that doesn't really matter if you have proof of concept. So I've built this character online previously, and I've been wanting to bring my natural self out into the world. I've been wanting to speak my truth, and I'm afraid. I really am. Because I've experienced a lot of negative energy by sharing my truth. And when I say negative energy, when you wake up the unconscious, it's not like a great process. It is if you get paid for it, okay? So my clients, ironically, pay me to do what I was doing to my friends and family back in the day. I get paid to do that now. They say, come trigger me. Essentially, I know it's not that, but to simplify it, they say, hey, I'm ready to be triggered because I need to go into their experience energetically, mentally, spiritually, and find where they're unconscious. And I provoke the unconscious, and then they get reactive, but I support them in that, and it's consensual. There's something powerful that happens when someone makes a payment, right? When we trade our hard-earned money and say, I'm ready to heal, I'm ready to see truth, that becomes very powerful. But for people that haven't consented, for people that haven't agreed to go through this process, it's very challenging, and you deal with a lot of challenging energy. So I've been mindful of that since I've come back, seeing people from 5, 7, 6, 8 years that I haven't seen in a while. I'm noticing moments where the territory is getting a little bit, and I have to pull myself back. So I've been feeling that, and that's created trauma from the past. But what I need to do now is to step into my ultimate version of myself. Is I need to broadcast my truth. It's a calling. It's like deep within me, but so what I'm doing inside myself is I'm filtering myself. And I'm going, well, if I say that, that's going to make these people maybe feel this way. And if I say this, it might make these people feel this way. So where I'm at now is I'm facing that today. And so my invitation for you is draw a line in the sand and get clear. Who are you for? Who are the people you're really trying to help? And put a message out to them. And that's what I'm doing with you right now. This message is for you. It's not for everyone. And don't try to be anything for everyone, Speak your truth. Don't filter it. And your truth might change over time as the more aware you become. But know that inside your heart, connect your intention, and know that you're speaking it with love. And you'll over time get better at expressing that. And over time, you'll be surprised by the amount of people that will be able to receive it. And for those that don't right now, that's okay. You don't need them to change. Will they change? I don't know, because the peace that I've come to within is that all souls are walking their own journey. And they've come here to learn lessons, and maybe some of those lessons they've come to learn from you, and maybe some of those lessons they've come to learn from their hardships and challenges. And if you take them away from their hardships and challenges, you're taking them away from their lessons. So speak your truth and allow your natural expression to come out. You're safe. And I support you. I share my peace and I share my love.